All right, Brian, it's been a while since we've been recording together.
We are live and in person. Well, live and in person across the internet, like we always have been. Folks, we want to just kind of pull the curtain back a little bit to let you know where we've been the last few months. We've published some episodes, and you saw our normal weekly cadence kind of changed. It's because we've been on a break. And I'll tell you, I'm grateful for my friend Josh, who came to me and said, Brian, I think you need to take a break. Wasn't that necessarily Josh was the one fraying at the edges, but I definitely was for multiple different reasons. Like we all can kind of hit those walls, and it drove some change. And those changes have been very positive over the last few months, especially. But here we are, and we're going to title this episode "All Good Things." ... Kind of as homage to Star Trek: Next Generation, one of our favorite shows. But this is where we are putting a comma in the conversation for the entire podcast, as we've made decisions to say, here's where some driving action is taking us into the future. This is the episode where we're going to maybe summarize a few things or talk about maybe what's coming next. But I just want to start this episode by saying I'm grateful for my friend who years ago talked me into doing this podcast. And as Josh knows, I'm not always the easiest person to sell on those ideas when you first come around. But I'll let him share about how that went down, because none of this would have ever been a thing without him approaching me as a friend saying we should do this.
Yeah, so I mean, totally. When I thought of doing a podcast was actually probably way longer before I talked to Brian about it. I was thinking like this would be fun to do, and it could be an interesting journey, right? So I was in my own work life, I was kind of in a stalemate with things. So I was like, let's just do this. So I needed a podcast partner because I didn't want to do it by myself. So I approached Brian about it. I think it was like 2017 when I just kind of floated the idea to Brian, and Brian's like, I don't really want to do this. And I'm like, well, because he wasn't really consuming podcasts. He wasn't really into that kind of thing, but I was, and that was in the early days, like when they were just kind of forming, right? So then I think it was like 2018. Brian was like, I'm still working on them over like a couple of months. And he's like, yeah, let's do this. What would it take? And I'm like, I don't really know. So let me get into it and figure it out. I said, we could figure this out. So I take a little bit of research, kind of search some forums, just kind of figure out, look, I just need a way to record video, or not video, but audio, and edit audio. That's all I need. And I don't have any money, so I can't pay anybody to edit. So I'm going to have to be the editor, and it's going to be, I know I'm going to suck at it, but it's going to be serviceable is what I was hoping for. So then Brian's like, yeah, let's just do it. So we start recording episodes, boom, CC is born. We start recording episodes. I start editing episodes and realize, wow, this is a lot of work.
Well,
so
we were terrible at it.
We were terrible at it, and it took me like 7 or 8 hours to edit the first episode, which is like 15 or 20 minutes. So Brian's like, how could we get better at it? So I started giving him feedback. We started changing over time. And I think that's the arc of CC. The overall arc is change. And how do we respond to that change?
This whole podcast, as I've thought about it, is like it's our relationship not only with one another, but to the podcast. That was the thing that we kept constant, that we published every week. And that was something where it gave us a chance not only to kind of work through the things that were going on in our lives, but also share that with everybody who was listening. And what I really realized that with every relationship also, there are certain things that change. There are some things that may stay the same, but that change is always in motion. And I know at the very beginning of this, we were talking about, well, who would we reach with this podcast? Is there anybody that's actually interested in listening to us? And that's
Right.
honestly the thing, like, I was not sure about. Do people actually want to hear two friends talk about stuff, or here's how their brain works? And I can tell you that people did. I think that was the growth for me, to know that I had valuable things that people wanted to listen to. And that was some of my own growth with it. I had, I think, many things to say. I also maybe didn't say them in the most eloquent ways or ways that was easily digestible. And the podcast made me distill down my thoughts. It made me take pauses. It got me really comfortable with silence in my speech. In my bass playing, for years, I've been taking space, and there's a lot of power in music that happens that way. But when it came to communication, I filled the space with more words. Was it necessary? Josh would say, "Is absolutely not necessary for you to say those words, Brian. You could have said it shorter." And he was right. But what it's done for me is it's given me a different confidence as I go into different environments. My ability to communicate, not only with people who would listen to a podcast, but in other areas. It's made me more curious, and it's reinforced that here we are now at this place. It's even more important to have a curiosity continuum. I'll weave that in there about the world around you and about the people that you find yourself in relationship with.
Yeah, for sure. And I think like also like years ago when we started recording, Brian and I were like, well, who's going to benefit from this? Right. And I said to him at one point, and Brian agreed, I'm like, if we could just change like one person, I think even like, affect one person's life in something positive. We did it. It was worth it to me. And the more we talk to people, we have affected a lot of people, but then we started looking at like, we started tiering people, like tiering things like, oh, we heard this change. I did that. And we heard that it was great. And Brian and I think we've talked about it off air a little bit. We've talked about it on our own, that the people we've changed the most has been ourselves. Like if you look at the beginning of the podcast, how regimented it was. And we needed that structure because we were terrible at it. When we come back into it now, and we haven't been recording for several months, we haven't actually recorded a new episode. I used some episodes we had recorded. I posted some of those and things like that. It doesn't feel like any time has been wasted. And so to me, that's a huge win.
That's just like good relationships where you can pick up where you left off. I remember when Josh and I didn't talk as much before the podcast. It was that same feeling. Like we're just picking up where we left off, and this is really good, and we catch up on things that have changed. I'll tell you that when I started this podcast, it wasn't about me changing. There wasn't this idea like allow myself to change myself by talking to people on a
About
podcast.
myself.
Exactly. But what it did is like the change happened because I was engaged in whatever the work was, right? It's the conversations, it's the things where as Josh and I talked back and forth, that came to be. That's I think the nature of change where people make this whole idea that you have to do all the change yourself, right? Like you have to be minded to be open for you to be able to grow and to develop, right? If you're a tree and you stop growing, like you're dying, right? That's kind
Right.
of observable in all of nature. But I'll tell you something that when you have that curiosity, when you're talking with other people or you're just engaged in the world around you, that very interaction is allowing you an opportunity to change. And that's something where that's a gift back to you when you are engaged in the world in a creative, curious sense. It kind of comes back in a way where you're the one changing, right? How you perceive the world, how you interact. And that's a very positive thing.
Yeah. I mean, I always like to say, there's the change can be painful, but the change can alter you. And how it alters you is really how you decide how it does it. And you get to steer your own way through that. So I think when you look back at the podcast, you'd actually see us do that with the topics that we chose. Because we started off very nostalgic focused. And then we started looking ahead. And then we said, oh, what in our skill set could we talk to people about in a fun way? Not necessarily like, oh, I'm going to give you here's my TED talk. Here's 30 minutes of me telling you how much I am better than you. And then, that just happens. But even through the cadence of our speech, like Brian said, um, you know, he doesn't feel the need to talk all the time, which you could have fooled me. But the one thing it has done is given him a lot of confidence that I've seen, where when we're together in groups of people, both of us have a lot of confidence just to say our thing and leave it at that. And we don't have to explain everything unless somebody says, hey, could you delve deeper into that? And a lot of times I've talked to people about things and they said, could you give me more insight into that? I refer them to one of my episodes of CC. I said, you know what? I got an episode recorded on that. Why don't you listen to that? And then we can have a conversation, because it just gives them baseline info, right? It also helps me not to have to reiterate everything 1,000 times, which is not, it's not that it's frustrating, but it's that it just gives people the baseline that they need. And I think that if people look at the body of work we did, and even if we look at it, like these are tools in a toolbox. These are
And
skills that you could have and pull out. You know, it's just good for you.
it's like an operating system. Josh
Yeah.
was talking to me before we started recording that he's got this Pentium 2. Now, over the course of podcast, there's a lot of nerd game references from Josh, because that's really the man himself. Living, breathing game nostalgia references on stuff.
Yeah.
And, you know, that, where's I going with this? See, I just lost my train of thought. This is good, because I was going to make a really poignant point.
This is how the sauce is made, people.
With Josh, you know, he made that thing work. I'm going to turn a little bit because this is where I can get back into it. He made that thing work years after it didn't work, because he figured out what to do. And the one thing that when I think about even these conversations, setting the baseline or doing something, is that you have to start, and you have to not be afraid to break something or to do it, right? I think I was so afraid that I was going to come off looking dumb or inadequate. And I was so how do you put it?
Hyper focused on yourself, like that way.
I was too
Yeah.
focused that I would be misunderstood or whatever it may be, or I didn't sound good enough. A lot of perfectionism has died over the course of the last 7 years. And I'll tell you something, Josh and I can live in our heads pretty well, right? We think about a lot of stuff. We talk about a lot of stuff. The biggest thing that we can tell you to do is go do it, right? Those ideas absolutely have value. Well, maybe not all the ideas that you have. So just those intrusive thoughts, you might just let those be quiet for a minute. But
yeah, I mean, no, that's true. But like also through the podcast, I think when you say just start, so people are afraid, right? And fear it's a very primal instinct that people have because, hey, that kept us alive. But in today's world, a lot of the fear it's not life and death. It's, do I feel stupid? Do I do this? My thing to people is, you know, those people that just do it and they don't care, that takes courage to do that. So it's like, just do that. Just do the thing. If some people don't like it, that's okay. But you started. And once you start, it's amazing. Once you start, the fear does go away. And when you get a negative feedback comment, a lot of times, you know, Brian and I have got negative feedback sometimes on the podcast, or constructive feedback in a negative way. I would say to them, we're not changing the podcast. And I'm sorry that you think that way. And they would say, well, why? I'm listening to your podcast. Why aren't you changing? I said, because it's our podcast. But that's okay that you gave me the feedback. Thank you. Well, and I think we do change somewhat if it was valid, but there's a lot of feedback that's just not valid because people are like, oh, I just don't like that. So in a way, to me, that also takes courage to say, like, no, this is the thing we're doing and this is what we're doing and we're just doing it. And I would stress to people, you know, like a lot of people ask me, well, I really want to start a podcast. I don't know how to start. I'm like, look, just start. You know, get a microphone. It can be your iPhone and start talking into it and post it to YouTube. Just start. The more you do it, the better you become at it.
that combination of I'm going to do a thing, I'm going to be a thing, I'm going to allow myself to change. Even if Josh and I didn't change the podcast format or something where here's our 3-hour episode, right? We were changing because we were interacting with the world. And I think that when you look at like almost like the operating system, that was my thing from the Pentium. Golly, now it finally came around. See, folks, I'm coming back around now. The operating system of the Pentium 2, that computer, is different than the operating systems that run an iPhone, that run a whatever, right? But inherent in that operating system were certain ways that the system worked. And you have that same thing. And what Josh and I think would leave you with is that if the podcast gives you any type of upgrade to your operating system, little things that you can put into how you interact with yourself and the world, then we've given you a better way to operate. And we're still ourselves. We have learned and we've changed over time. And our hope for you as we put a comma in this conversation of the podcast is that you're willing to go out and make change for yourself and allow other things to change you and understand what is kind of the true line in this. I will tell you that the true line for me, and I probably speak for Josh as well, is our friendship was the true line throughout all these episodes, through ups and downs, through business things that worked well and things that didn't work well, and other conversations that we've had to have. That relationship and our friendship has been the theme, which honestly, over the course of this body of work, you've seen not only a proof of concept of how you can interact with the world, but a proof of friendship that two guys have had and will continue to have.
Yeah, and it would say yes to everything Brian said. I would also say, the people who are saying that, it's not the right time or it's not this or it's not that. Those are all excuses to not do something, not try something. And if it's, you always hear people say, if not now, when, if not you, who, right? And that's just the whole thing is be the thing you want to see. And you have the power to do it. And the episodes of CC aren't going anywhere. We're not going to record new episodes, but the old episodes and backlog are always going to be there for right now anyway. We haven't decided to take them down. They're going to stay up because we think that that's great content for everybody to keep enjoying.
What I love about this also is that it, maybe closes a chapter in one sense, but it opens up new opportunities for Josh and me to go exploring. And what's always fun about, since this is our show, Josh, we could always launch the show again if we ever wanted to.
That's right. We'd be on cable TV.
Pay-per-view, folks. You got it.
Or on our own channel or something. We might do something. Who knows?
You'll find us out and about. I guarantee it. And when you run into
when we run out of money. Yeah, when we run out of money.
We're coming back. We're doing the Farewell Tour Part 5.
We lost a couple zeros on the royalty checks, We'll be back. Like Sting. We're never going anywhere.
Folks, it has been a pleasure to share space with you over these last 7 years, over all these episodes. Thank you for listening. We hope to find you out there in the wild being curious and being the change that you want in the world. Until next time, this is Brian.
And this is Josh.
For Curiosity Continuum.